I wanted to take a minute to talk about one of the most misunderstood pieces of symbolism you're going to come across in your occult research, and probably one of the most feared also, mainly by people with a religious background or people who are just very off-put by looking at the picture in general, because obviously it's not a very beautiful, inviting-looking figure we got here. So this is a drawing originally done by Eliphas Levi in the 1800s of a figure called Baphomet, Baphomet, however you want to say it. And most people's first thoughts obviously are going to be that it's the devil. And that's only because people are very misinformed and misled, mainly by Christian doctrine and just fear of the unknown in general. So I just want to go over some of the meanings here and shed a little bit of light on the subject. So this picture here is one of the only ones you're really going to find online when you look at it, and although it's a great start, it's not fully correct and it's only some surface level meanings. So the main thing that you'll see is on his arm there's the words solve and coagula, and this is alchemical references for the first and the final stage of the alchemical process, which is to dissolve the element you're working with, and then the last stage is a coagulation of bringing everything back together. Um, he has two wings, which they're saying represents the sky or air. He's got the caduceus right here, which would be the phallic region. He's sitting on what looks like to be a representation of the earth or a globe. So yeah, I'm not going to go over this one that much because I want to get into some of the deeper stuff. But yeah, just know when you find this picture here, it's not really the deepest meanings you got. So let's see what the legendary Manly P. Hall has to say about it. The goat of Mendes, or Baphomet, whom the Templars were accused of worshipping, is a goat-headed deity, being formed of both male and female principles, with a caduceus of Mercury for its phallus. One arm points up and one down, with the Latin Salve et Coagula written on them. This is not the image of a Christian devil, but a symbol of the ancient alchemists, representing nature and nature's god, is a combination and balance of male and female forces, light and darkness, moisture and dryness. The very principle of Hermes Trismegistus, as above, so below, is what is symbolized by Baphomet. This is from Manly P. Hall, The Dionysian Mysteries in Masonry, 1936. And we have a nice little piece of artwork to go with it here. So let me pull up a couple more things here, and we'll touch on some things. So as that last little excerpt said, is that this is usually associated with the Templars, and they try to say it was worshipped by the Templars, and the figure does go back much further than the drawing there by Eliphas Levi, as you can see here. There's one on the Cathedral of Notre Dame, built by the Knights Templar. There's the drawing there. Here's an old Mesopotamian god called Pazuzu from approximately 700 BC. Here's a pentagram on it says a Templar pentagram graffiti somewhere on a rock. And then here's what's called the sabbatical goat pentagram. Now, the first thing I want to show you about with the pentagram there, his head, the goat head, actually does partially represent a pentagram shape, as you can see right here. And this goes into our first part of getting into the really deep meanings going on here. So the pentagram, or the inverted pentagram, is not evil. It's just a symbol with many deep meanings, and we're going to touch on a couple of them. So this is what I think is the most important part here. So the angles actually inside of the pentagram shape, the interior angles are 108 degrees, and another interior angle here is 72, and then 36. And if you'll notice, all of these add up to the number 9. 1 plus 8 is 9, 7 plus 2 is 9, 3 plus 6 is 9. And that's a very important thing to start understanding and paying attention to with a lot of the research you're going to get into. Now also, the pentagram represents the the number 5, which is called the number of man, and it's also the four main elements and the fifth element, which is the spirit. And the four elements are air, earth, fire, and water. And we won't go too deep into that now, but just know that the pentagram itself has multiple meanings. Now, here's a nice little carving of Pazuzu just to show you that he's got the same thing going on here with his right arm up and left arm below, representing the as above so below, or the Salve et Coagula. Now, right here around his phallic region, you see that there is a caduceus, which is an ancient symbol which also has many different levels of interpretation, but you can see that that's what it's representing here. Now, this can represent the spinal column and the dual serpents of the Kundalini rising up to the top and then meeting here at the top. It has alchemical uses for the process from beginning to end. We won't touch too much on that. Now also, you can see that it somewhat generally follows the pattern of the Kabbalistic tree of life, with the flame here, the torch on his head, probably representing Kether, or the crown, which would be depending on how you're looking at it, either the final stage or the beginning, whether you're looking at it from the bottom up or the top down. But either way, it seems to be associated with Kether, probably here on the tree, which is the first emanation down into physical reality and the first phase of light that you can see that does the creation in nature before it splits down into these dual poles here. Here's a symbol for Kether. It has the crown on it, representing this final ultimate stage of illumination, or transcending this duality and achieving a unity beyond the dualistic view. Now, just touching on that torch he had on his head, in general, torches and lanterns and things like that represent illumination, enlightenment, a final stage of alchemical process where you achieve the monoatomic gold, or the philosopher's stone, this ultimate level that you can achieve or activate or whatever. But it also represents bringing down an energy or a consciousness and a knowledge from these higher realms, possibly the unseen realms, down into the physical reality. This here is based on the story of Prometheus, and he defied the main god Zeus at the time and brought a torch of knowledge and consciousness down to humans, which Zeus did not want. And so you could represent Prometheus as some sort of a bad guy for doing that, for going against the god, but what he was doing was actually in the best interest of man. So some people could view him as actually a savior type character, or a creator of man, or the bringer of our free will and consciousness that we can use to evolve. Now, here's a card from the Rider-Waite Tarot deck called the Magician, and you can see there's the very similar symbolism here. One arm up, one arm down. I'm not sure what he's holding here, but it seems to represent the same thing as the torch going on and everything else. So these are just various pictures. It's a compilation I made of various things holding torches that you'll find all over the place. I already looked at that. Okay, now, one second here. Sorry, one moment. Alright, Baphomet is also associated with the Greek god Pan, which seems to also look like a devil character, but it goes much deeper than that, obviously. But these are connected here. He's got the same hooves going on here, which are crossed and touching the earth sphere here, or the material plane, the lowest form of manifestation, the most dense and solid. So we won't go too deep into what Pan actually represents, but just thought that might be something important for you to know. Pan is the god of the earth. He plays this little instrument, this little flute type instrument, which is associated with the harmony of the spheres and sound frequencies being what creates physical reality around us, and vibrations holding everything together. Um, Now, this is where it starts to get into where you could associate this with something construed as the devil, which is a very misunderstood name and symbol in itself. Now, this is another card from the Rider-Waite Tarot deck, the Devil card, and he is doing the same one arm up, one arm down thing here. But you see here, he has the torch with the flame, similar to that one picture I showed you, where this would seem to be representing um, whatever the flame here represents being brought down into the physical. So if you're striving for the highest realms and you're trying to ascend your consciousness and live a godly life, or only focus on things outside of the ego or material plane and all that, you could say that doing anything based on the ego, or pleasing yourself, or uh, things like that are bad, and it's called the devil because that's tempting you away from the higher realms down into the lower. So this doesn't just represent a some evil entity out there in its in some of its deeper levels. It can mean that on one level, but it's mostly symbolic, and that's really important to start understanding when you get into this stuff. Is you have to start looking past the surface level meanings and your first reactions when you see something like this, only based on what you were told growing up, or what a mainstream religious doctrine would have you believe. Um, okay, so another thing you'll notice here, let me close these down for you. Another thing you'll notice here is that he has breasts, and this is one thing most people are really curious about and kind of freaks them out when they look at it. So he has breasts because this is representing an androgynous figure. In alchemy and other things, it's important to unite the male and the female energies into one to achieve this certain thing you're trying to, and it can represent transcending duality, or the left brain, the right brain, the masculine aspects and the feminine aspects into one, which is an important aspect of all this. So that's what the breast represent, is that he obviously looks like a male character, but he has combined female characteristics to it. So let me show you a picture about what androgyne means. So here you see a drawing of a androgyne, and this goes into some of the meanings about the alchemical stuff. Before the patriarchal god depicted in the Bible, before even the great mother of the Neolithic era, there was the primordial goddess, a being encompassing all genders and yet genderless, the androgyne, an alchemical model of divine wholeness. Is an ancient symbol derived from widespread worship of primal deities who were simultaneously male and female. The reunited male and female principles were considered the purpose of alchemy, and thus of all human endeavors. Here's a painting or a drawing by a man named, I guess, Joffre Boschart, and this is actually an astrological painting representing the sign of Gemini, but this has a lot of the relevant symbolism here. And you can see that starting from down here in the lowest stage and working your way up, the goal of this picture here, the symbolism, is uniting the male and the female aspects into one. And this is that androgyne figure here. So, and this also looks like it's relevant to that tree of life I showed you a little bit ago. You can see that you have the two pillars, and it follows the same generic model here. Let's see what we got next. Okay, so one more thing is, sorry, one second. The goat head is also related to the sign of Capricorn, and that's partially what the goat head is about. And if you look here on this picture, the point of this pentagram here is pointing right to the cusp where Capricorn is at. Now, we won't go too deep into that, but this is what's known sometimes as the gate of the gods. And this is where energy flows in or out of physical reality into this other dimension. And it's related to the actual zodiac sign of Capricorn and that constellation in the sky and the area of space. And also, it's representative of a particular stage you'll get to in a alchemical process or something like that. Um, let's see here. Okay, this is where it also kind of starts getting into where people misinterpret, or one person's use of it makes everybody start to think it's evil somehow. So this is the first way it started getting used in a pentagram shape like this. Let's read it. The original goat pentagram first appeared in the book La Clef de la Magie Noire by French occultist Stanislas de Guaita in 1897. This symbol would later become synonymous with Baphomet and is commonly referred to as the Sabbatic goat. Samael is a figure in Talmudic lore, and Lilith, a female demon in Jewish mythology. The Hebrew letters at the 5 points of the pentagram spell out Leviathan, a mythic creature in Jewish lore. This symbol was later adapted by the Church of Satan in 1969 and officially named the sigil of Baphomet. So even though this picture here had already been around for a couple hundred years, and some of the carvings we've seen of Pazuzu and on the Knights Templar building go back even hundreds of years past that, and thousands of years in some cases. So it actually being associated with anything satanic only started, roughly 40, 50 years ago. And that's when it works its way into the collective consciousness and gets used to promote this as strictly a demonic, satanic figure. Okay, one of the last things we'll go over here. You see here, there's this arch figure here, and that could be related to a few different things. For one, there's a thing in Masonry called the Royal Arch, and it's a particular degree, but it's also a symbolism and representing something. So just showing you here that this is the Royal Arch, and I think I have another picture here. It can represent a certain section of the zodiac belt, which also corresponds to many other things in the fractal universe and alchemical processes and things like that. So don't take what this picture says right here as absolute. I've heard people say this isn't perfectly correct, but you can see how that is what's going on here, and it represents something to do with an arch or a process or something astrological, probably, and it could represent these higher realms actually coming through, and this is like the portal down into the lower realm. This is the middle area of the whole picture, and this would also be the area where the energy or the stuff would actually start to manifest down into the physical. These two caduceus serpent heads are meeting here at this crown, this point here, and then it goes down into the physical realm, represented by this sphere here with his feet being on it. Okay, last thing, and we'll be done for now. He has the two wings, which obviously could represent something to do with the air element. In alchemical symbolism, there's a lot of birds used in alchemy symbols, and representing how the spirit of an element you're working with can rise up out of the element, and it can be trapped and captured and then reused later on in the process. So for one, this can represent the ability of this energy to be removed out of the base matter in a process similar to flying, like a bird would do. And also the wing symbolism on an eagle or a phoenix type thing is very prevalent in ancient cultures going back thousands of years, and also in Masonry. And we won't go into what this means, but just wanted to show you, that also is related to this picture here. There's a lot more. You could expound on this and take it much deeper, but that's a good overview and just showing you how symbolism in general has many different layers of interpretation, and how you have to start getting past your first reactions and emotions to things like this, and your pre-existing beliefs based on what you've been told, to start to uncover what these things are trying to relate to people. So I hope you found this useful, and maybe you'll share it or can use it somehow later on in your own research. All right, thanks. Have a good one.